Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hi friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had an opportunity to catch up with Paul Reilly, president of Tom Reilly Training, based in St. Louis, Missouri. Paul and I have been working the same training circuit for several years, and it is always a pleasure to get his take on current events. This was no exception. We took this time to dive into the mental health of salespeople and the challenges this pandemic has brought into their lives. Paul shares some exercises he has developed for helping people improve their mental toughness. This is a timely message, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSQL Distribution Software. InSQL is a fully functional distribution-based software package, and these folks do it very well at a price point many smaller distributors can afford. Another thing I like about this company is they do it all in-house. They take on these applications and build them into the platform using state-of-the-art Microsoft technology. No third-party bolt-ons for them. This is important because when you need technical assistance, they are the single point of contact. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSQL Distribution Software at www.insql.com. That's INXSQL.com. All right, Paul. Well, hey, welcome back to Distribution Talk. It's always a pleasure to get to chat with you.
Excellent. No, Jason, thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Well, it's great because you're a seasoned podcaster, so you're comfortable behind the mic. This is an easy breezy thing. You've got a very successful podcast of your own, by the way, the Q&A Sales Podcast. In fact, tell me a little bit about your journey on this one so far.
I was interested in starting a podcast, probably been about 2.5, 3 years ago. And at first glance, I was like, gosh, what could I offer that's not out there already? How could it be different?
Right.
And one thing I've noticed this, and you've noticed this just from being out there in the speaking circuit and training, after each one of my programs, there's always a group of salespeople that come up afterwards and say, Paul, great stuff, but hey, we got one more question for you. And there always seemed to be one more question. And I thought, okay, wouldn't it be great to create a podcast that is designed just to answer questions that salespeople have? And so that's where the idea of the Q&A Sales Podcast came from. And initially I thought, okay, I'll just keep a tally of what salespeople ask me in my training seminars, at keynote presentations.
Right.
But we ended up quickly creating an outlet for people just to visit the website and fill out a question form. And then I'm able to get those questions stacked up and answer them and research them, and sometimes invite guests on the show that are better suited to answer the questions than me. But yeah, the Q&A Sales Podcast, it's really been fun and something I'm doing, I guess, differently. We're trying to tweak it and always improve on it. I'm having regular salespeople on the show now.
Oh, nice.
And we're just having conversations about questions they have. I say regular salespeople, like these are some top performing sales folks on the show, but we'll talk about what challenges they're facing, what's going on in their world. And that keeps it fresh. It's so important, when you're in our type of position as an outside trainer, speaker, consultant, that you're staying close to what your audience is experiencing. So that was a way to do it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's exactly the same experience I've had. I have had that opportunity to hear what people are going through right now. And I'll just say, podcasting is a creative outlet. It's a great creative outlet. And you're right. You get to ask those questions, especially when you do the interview side. Now that you're getting in and doing more interview type things, is you get to ask people, things that you always had on your mind. And then, that translates into our practices, our speaking and our training and whatnot, because you get these little nuggets. And I think before that, maybe I wasn't getting those as much. And I was kind of working off my longstanding content and longstanding material and not refreshing it. So
it keeps it fresh. And I'll tell you, it's kind of entertaining. I had a guest on the show last week, and we were talking about cold calling. And I just asked him, I'm like, hey, what's the weirdest thing that's ever happened on a cold call?
I think I saw you post this. Yeah.
And he was talking about how he was visiting with a customer who happened to be at their house. So they operated their business out of the house, which caught him off guard a little bit.
Sure.
And then during their meeting, like 5 cats came out of the closet and just started crawling all over him and all this. I'm like, man, that is pretty weird.
And especially cold calling at somebody's home. I mean, that would just be bizarre.
Yeah.
It'd be uncomfortable, especially if it just
Yeah.
didn't go well. You're like, how do I get out of here quickly and gracefully? And I understand that you're following now, on your podcast. I mean, you've actually been very successful. It's gone very, very well, but you've got a lot of international listeners.
Yeah. It's crazy to me how, podcasting, the way I view it, and I heard a podcast guy, for lack of a better word, I think he runs Podfest. He was talking about how podcasting is basically taking your voice and making it Googleable around the world so people can find you.
Interesting. Okay.
And so the podcast is now in over 75 countries. India is a big market, a lot of downloads.
Yeah, that's what our shared editor, she shared that with me, that you are big in India.
Yeah.
So you've got a following in India.
Absolutely. And what's great is I'll get questions that are very niche to that market. I remember someone in like the mortgage or banking industry over there in India wanted to know, how do I sell life insurance for mortgages? Basically, it's an insurance product that you can sell on top of a mortgage and that. And so it's great answering those niche questions. And what's interesting too is that selling, it continues to be one of the most common professions worldwide. I mean, it's just a case in point with all these downloads from these different countries.
It is. It's fascinating. I remember the first time I looked and I said, wow, Ghana, huh? Yeah, Ghana. Somebody downloaded me in Ghana. Okay. Yeah. And it's fascinating, that you'll go kind of in fits and spurts with different countries and what's being downloaded. But no, I think you're right. The universal appeal of sales challenges is that's a great way to connect it. And I think it draws us a little closer. You think about the world isn't as big some days as we always think it is. So
you're right. And just along those same lines, I'm working with an international client right now where we're interviewing sales professionals throughout the world, the Asian markets, Australia, Europe, Latin America. And price continues to be one of the biggest challenges, overcoming price objections. So that good news is people are cheap everywhere, not just here in the States. Right? That's what I took from it.
Oh, it's funny. I'm glad both of us had got into this and really have enjoyed that interaction and whatnot. But, I think it's also led us to really keep a pulse on where people are mentally and where they are in their current environment. And so, now over the last 18 months, our world has changed pretty dramatically. And so the group, I think I shared with you a little bit, the sales managers that I talk to on a regular basis as well. They've talked about their salespeople struggling. Now, they're killing it. From a commission standpoint, they're killing it.
Right.
The sands are shifting all the time. It's difficult to maintain what worked last week, can't work this week. And it's really a difficult environment right now. So, and I think you've been very in tune with this kind of struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I've noticed as well. About a year ago, around this time, right, we're well into the pandemic.
Right.
And a lot of my clients are saying, hey, business is actually pretty good. I'm like, that's great. Wonderful. I just start talking to the salespeople. I'm like, so how's it going? And it's a pretty simple question. And I would get responses that surprised me. One salesperson was telling me, man, I'm absolutely crushing my quota. I'm basically at my quota for the year already. Can't believe it. It's unbelievable. My margins are the highest they've ever been. We've got, our pipeline is full. But then I'd ask the question again, and I'm trying to draw out of them, what is it really like? I said, okay, well, beyond performance, how are you doing mentally? How are you able to handle this challenging environment? And that's when salespeople would open up to me and they would say things like, you know what? I'm struggling mentally. This is so taxing. I'm just exhausted from not just managing the virtual work environment or work from home, but trying to teach my kids, trying to babysit them throughout the day and get my work done. I'm trying to plan my next year. I'm looking ahead. Everything seems uncertain. I'm sick and tired of Zoom meetings and getting on video calls and sending emails. I'm just mentally exhausted. And I thought to myself, this is something that we need to address because performance does not equal happiness.
Right. Absolutely.
Just because things are going well. And think about that, Jason, how often in life, we meet people that, let's say they're extremely wealthy or they're successful by every business metric you can imagine, but they're just not happy. And that's something that is going to continue to be a challenge until we're through this.
Well, and I think to that point about, the business owners or somebody who appears to be very wealthy and very successful in their organization, and you look at them, but they are so engrossed in that there's nothing else. And so when it comes to retire or it comes to maybe selling the business, they don't know what to do with themselves. And I recall this several years ago. There was a gentleman that worked with our family business. In fact, he sold my father, the original family business. And he said, a lot of his friends had retired and he was probably well into his 70s at this point. And he said, the guys I know that retired, I mean, unfortunately, they live about 6 more months and then that's it.
And they retire permanently.
That's right. They retire permanently. Yeah. And he said that's why he kept doing it. And so I think there's definitely that measure of happiness. What makes you happy? And if you can't diversify your life, that it's going to be tough, especially when we go through these very difficult times.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So to address this, you heard this now a number of times, and I will say that I've been slightly obsessing about mental health for the last 3 weeks because this is something that I really have been realizing that not only in myself, but in others that I work with and others that I coach, that yes, there is financial success, but we're not hitting on all cylinders. Right. Something is off. And this is what I've been really trying to dig into lately. And you've got your book coming out, and it really actually kind of dives right into this subject, selling through tough times,
Right. Absolutely. So the new book, what's interesting, I was looking at the challenges we're facing right now mentally, just the mental aspect of it. And for most salespeople that have just gotten into sales in the past, let's say since the Great Recession,
right?
That back in 08, 09,
right.
So many salespeople right now are facing tough times for the very first time.
Sure.
And they have not built that foundation of mental resilience. And so with the book, rather than it just set up as a traditional selling book based on tactics on how to sell during tough times and downturns, whatever it may be, industry disruption, a recession, which the book is filled with that. But the first section is really about the mental side of selling through a downturn or through a tough time. Because every seller struggles, whether you're new to sales, whether you're experienced, it could be just trying to build your business as a new salesperson. That can be struggling. It could be a sales slump for an experienced person, but the key is building the right mental framework, because so much of business and life is obviously based on our attitude, our mentality. It's especially true in sales because every single day you need to perform at your absolute best. And you can only do that if you're thinking your best. If the most important conversation we have every day is not the conversation with our customer, it's the conversation we have with ourselves, what we say in between our 2 ears. That if you want to predict a salesperson's success, just listen to their thoughts. All right. And if you're a salesperson trying to figure out how successful you're going to be, just listen to your thoughts. And that's going to be part of it. So we talked about the book and mental health and that piece. Last year, when I was hearing from salespeople, oh man, I'm struggling. And I'm just trying to manage right now. I thought at that point, okay, what if I could create a list of exercises every single day for salespeople to help them build that mental strength? Because Jason, you think about how often we go to the gym or we go run a couple miles. We work on our physical strength more so than our mental strength. And the goal of that exercise, I call it the daily mental flex. It's a collection of 6 exercises that will help you build resilience and help you build that mental strength that we need. And you've seen this on LinkedIn. I launched that 30-day Tough Timer Challenge.
Yeah.
I'm like day 12 now, I think is where I'm at on it. And this was a kind of a challenge for salespeople, something to build camaraderie with your team, for the sales community. And the challenge is pretty simple. Every single day, you have to complete the daily mental flex, which is 6 exercises. Exercise 1 focuses on gratitude. Exercise 2 focuses on continuous improvement. Exercise 3 is self-discipline. And then we have positively reframing negative events, pruning negativity from our lives. And the final exercise is about reducing friction, which is setting yourself up for tomorrow's success today. But the other side of the challenge is planning every sales call, being intentional with our efforts.
Right.
And by doing that, it just helps build that mental strength. What salespeople that have been doing this have told me is that what's great is I'm accomplishing something every day. Every day I feel like I'm moving forward. I'm getting stronger.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, I'll tell you, the planning piece at the end, I find that is such a confidence builder. It's almost like a relief. If you have really spent time and you've planned out that next day and that next call or the next week, or even gone further than that, man, all of a sudden you have this space that you've created for yourself that you can do more with. If you were always coming 11th hour quarterback, you're the procrastination king, which I identify with, trust me, really, really well. But if you do that, there is no space for that creativity. There's no space for that additional effort that you can put in. And I think that's what gives you that opportunity. And so, no, I agree with the mental health aspect here, because we can have all the tools and all the tricks in the bag and all these different things, and we can know the product. We can have the greatest features and benefits known to man. But if you are not in it, if you're not ready, it's just not going to go well. It just isn't.
I remember being in sales, and if you're in a sales slump where you're struggling, we've all been there, just how exhausting it is to try to get yourself amped up, to try to get out of that dark spot you're in.
Right.
And if you're not operating at 100%, if your attitude, if your heart and mind is not in it, customers sense that. It's not that they sense that you're like a Debbie Downer, or that you're a pessimistic or negative person, or you just seem like you're feeling sorry for yourself. What they notice is the absence of enthusiasm and passion and excitement, things that influence. And when that's missing, we're not going to perform at our best.
If it's funny, you should say that. I every once in a while I get a chance to coach salespeople, manufacturer sales reps that are selling into distribution, and we talk about PK sessions and getting in front of distributor groups, not only sales but some of the internal salespeople as well. And I said, look, if you're not a cheerleader for your products, if you are not enthusiastic, why should they be? They've got 300 other supplier products that they are selling. Why should they be enthusiastic if you're not? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
You've got to be remember the Spartan cheerleader skit from Saturday Night Live, Will Ferrell and
absolutely. Sure.
Sherry O'Terry, maybe that was her name. I forgot.
I don't recall. Yeah.
You got to be that cheerleader though.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. You do. And now not everybody does have that cheerleader mentality, and that's just not who they are. And I will admonish people, don't try to be that if you aren't.
Sure. Yeah. Be authentic.
God, I remember trying to be a speaker like my previous business partner, the gentleman I bought the business from, and trying to tell the jokes like he did. And it was awful. So I think in that authenticity, you just have to really feel that, but you can have that in your own way. There are definitely various ways to convey that. But if you don't feel that enthusiasm, if you can't bring that, then there's no way that client will. And again, it just isn't going to work as well as you would hope. You might get the sale because they really, really need it. Like right now, you might be getting lucky, but it's not a sustainable practice.
Right. Absolutely.
Tell me some more about the mental flex. This is one of the things that, when you put that out, I thought, oh my God, this is like right now. This is exactly what I've been thinking about, the mental challenge of getting past this. And I talked about this previously, this languishing. It was an interesting term. The term I was not familiar with a month ago, and now I'm very familiar with it. But this languishing and this sense of blah, and then your mental flex, the tough timer challenge came out, and I'm like, oh man, I think he's in the same area right now. He's seeing the same thing right now. So tell me a little bit about, where did the 6 different steps come from? Is this something that you researched? Is something that you went through? How did that come about?
Yeah, really, it's all of the above. So when I was writing the book and going through that process, the book has a section. It's called What It Is to Be a Tough Timer. And a tough timer is kind of like an archetype. It's the individual who's able to thrive through challenging times. And we developed this archetype just based on our experience in training salespeople for the past going on almost 40 years. And there's been a lot of ups and downs. There's been a lot of recessions through there. There's been downturns, industry-specific rolling recessions. And during those times, we've noticed there are certain salespeople that thrive. They're able to just crush it still, even in a downturn. And so what we wanted to do was create a way for any seller to develop the mental strength that they have. And so we looked at these individuals and we identified some areas where they tend to outperform. We look at these individuals and we ask ourselves, okay, what is it that they do different? And based on that information, I created these 6 exercises. All right. The first one, gratitude, right? Gratitude, through researching gratitude and everything, all the positive benefits, it can actually reduce your risk of heart attack. It can alleviate stress. It certainly makes you appreciate what you have, even especially on a tough day when you are facing multiple setbacks. Just reading your gratitude journal and reminding yourself of what you're grateful for, it gives you some perspective. And that's important. Exercise 2 is about continuous improvement. One thing we've noticed about tough timers, they are insatiable when it comes to wanting to improve and get better. They focus on always getting a little bit better every day, maybe not coming up with life-changing or groundbreaking discoveries every day, but they do a little bit to become better every single day. And so we wanted to focus and exercise on continuous improvement. Number 3, we found tough timers, they're not the flash in the pan success. They are steadfast in their approach. And so when we look at how do we remain steadfast? How can we stay focused and run the marathon versus a sprint, to use an analogy?
Right.
And it boils down to self-discipline. Self-discipline, the way we define it, is basically doing the things you just don't feel like doing. And so with the self-discipline exercise, it's about listing out a couple of things that you just don't feel like doing and then completing those things. Yeah, I'll give you an example, Jason, over the weekend. So on the weekend, I take a personal focus to the daily mental flex, and I do things around the house. I focus on family. Yesterday, I asked my wife, I said, hey, I'm doing this 30-day challenge. It means I have to do things I don't feel like doing. Do you have a list of things that you've been wanting me to do around the house? And I thought she was going to pass out from excitement.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Really?
I was like, yeah.
She was like overwhelmed. She's like, I don't even know where to start. Here's one thing. And actually, there was a light bulb that was broken, all right, in the socket. And she's like, I've been asking you to do this for 7 months. Can you please fix that? And I'm like, yeah, all right. I didn't feel like doing it, but you do it. And doing little things like that, it builds self-discipline, which is so critical. And it gives you a small sense of pride when you complete those tasks.
Yeah, it's an esteem builder. I mean, I absolutely believe those small wins, those small completions, that's an esteem builder. And that's really, I'm with you. I get that, and really coming from that gratitude side, your esteem is being built. Your esteem is being built. You do a couple little things, and then, you do some things you don't want to do, but you made it through and it wasn't as hard as you thought. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then exercise 4 is about pruning negativity from your life and planting positivity. And this means pruning negative thoughts, pruning negative people in certain cases from your life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And just replacing it with a more positive tone. For example, nobody's mentally perfect, right? So we all have moments where we might feel sorry for ourselves or we're making complaints. One thing I do to prune negativity is I will say to myself, okay, today is a 0 complaining day. If I find myself complaining mentally or whatever it is, I'm going to look for ways to become more positive. And I might recite a positive affirmation statement, or I might just switch focus. But that's an example of that. And exercise 5 is about positive reframing. Positive reframing is taking a negative event and figuring out what the positive outcome that came from that negative event. Before the show, you and I were talking about live events, how some are being canceled again. I had a program that was canceled for a Monday, right? And negative event. Of course, right? Program gets canceled.
Sure.
How could that be positive? Well, the positive outcome there is the event was on a Monday, which meant I would have had to travel on Sunday. And Sunday's family day for us. And so now I get to spend it with my family. All right. That's something simple, but what you're doing is you're training your brain to find the positive, to look for the outcome that stems from that negative event.
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, looking for that silver lining. And I remember, in fact, one of the things that I did actually just write an article. Sometimes you forget about writing because we write so much. You forget about, what did I write about last month? Yeah, but it was supply chain silver linings, and there was just some little things that, I had asked that, I'd called upon my groups, and asked them, hey, what was the silver linings? And so again, it is that reframing and that ability to look at a silver lining in a very difficult time. Supply chain mess is a difficult one. This is one that's causing consternation all along the distribution spectrum and frankly in the manufacturing as well. But, looking for small little things, taught us to be more resourceful, looking at other products and frankly, raising our margins because we can right now and things like that, So I totally understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's an interesting time for sure. And especially with supply chain disruption and that. And just to complete the daily mental flex, the final exercise, we call it reducing friction. So that's really about setting yourself up for tomorrow's success today. For example, if you're a salesperson, you say, okay, my goal tomorrow is to make 10 prospecting calls. All right, what can you do today to make tomorrow easier? Can you get the list of prospects together? Can you do some research ahead of time? It's just about proactively setting yourself up for success.
Absolutely. And then again, creating space for yourself, creating that ability for you to do just a little bit more, when you go and make that call, a little bit more. It's that I'm ready. I'm in a positive mental framework. I am ready to just do a little more than I did before. Just do a little bit more to see if I can close that or if I can help someone else through a difficult challenge. I think, that's another area that I've always found helps me reframe my thinking is when I reach out and try to be of service to somebody else. I find that if I can get out of my own headspace for a little while and help someone else with whatever it is, whether, it could be physical, mental, but if I can do that, then I am now better prepared to go into whatever challenge I'm going into.
Yeah, that's a great example, Jason. Just stepping outside of yourself and looking to help or serve and just do those things that maybe even take the focus off of yourself.
That's exactly it. That is. Yeah.
Because no, that's interesting. That's great.
Recognize that other people are struggling as well. That, you can pick up the phone and you pick up the phone, ask somebody how they're doing. And if they'll actually answer honestly, there's the standard, I'm fine. But every once in a while, you're going to catch the, man, I'm not doing so great. I'm off my game. That is that opportunity to be of service. And frankly, will take you away from, some of the things that are clouding your head at the point too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then you go into the planning. So you said you're in day 12 of this.
Yes. Yeah. Day 12.
Any more examples? I think this is something, that the listeners, I really would love to see them take this on. I want to see them take this on. So any other examples of people that have reached out to you and said, hey, this is pretty fantastic?
Yeah, gosh, I remember one seller who just sent me a message on LinkedIn, and that's where I'm most active with all this stuff is LinkedIn. Sure. I'll post the videos. They sent me a message just saying, and I'm on day 3 of this, and self-discipline is critical. He's like, I never realized how lazy I was until I started doing the self-discipline exercise. I'm like, really? I'm like, that's good. It's eye-opening. But one thing that he mentioned in his note was, as I'm struggling mentally, there's things we need to do every day. The self-discipline piece, I started doing things that I just don't feel like doing. And it really does help set the rest of the day up for success. He's like, by doing that, I'm like, wow, I did that. I did that annoying thing that I've been putting off. It truly is. Right. And one other piece is the gratitude piece. That really provides perspective, especially when we realize that the problems we face every day, there are literally billions of people in this world that would trade their problems for our problems any day. Yeah,
absolutely.
That gratitude provides perspective.
It does. I mean, actually, I was given a tool years and years and years ago about coming up with a gratitude list. Mm-hmm. And it was just the alphabet. You just start with, what's an A word I'm grateful for? B word. It's it. And it was also one of those things that helps you go to sleep. Mm-hmm. If you're struggling, you go into sleep, it was do your gratitude list, and you just kind of roll through it, do that mental exercise. And, by the time you're at Z, you're just about cleared out. And it really, I found it to work really well for me. That was a tool that I was taught, quite a long time ago. So,
thinking of the alphabet piece, when you get to X, I mean, I gotta wonder what's like. X
What am I gonna? That's a tough one, man.
All those xylophone lessons I took in high school or whatever.
Gosh, absolutely. That X-ray I have coming up, and then you can go to the medical moment and then really get. I'm grateful I am not having to get X-rays all the time. Because I actually landed that jump and I'm not going in for another MRIs. Those are grateful moments right there.
Absolutely.
And one of the things, if I could I wanted to touch on something here on the pruning thing. You got me when you mentioned pruning people. And I think that's really important. There is, again, kind of an old adage. Why do you let people inside your head that don't pay rent? Why do you let them occupy your head? And that's always stuck with me. So yes, there's those negative people that seem to take up this extraordinary amount of headspace. Right. And by getting out the broom and you got to broom the people out of there, I think that's a really important way to improve your mental approach, your attitude towards whatever challenges you're going to be facing that day.
Absolutely. And other things you can do, for pruning negativity, I don't really watch the news anymore. I stay informed, but
absolutely. I'm hearing you, Paul. Yeah.
That's one where I prune that from my life, and it's important to stay informed, obviously, but there's other ways to do it. But that's an example. And that's why, if it bleeds, it leads. That's the old expression in the news world where the most negative, fear-driven stories are going to lead. They're going to be the most compelling because fear is the strongest motivator we have. So that plays into it. That
was one of the ones that one of my groups, we went through this exercise, talked about, some of the things that we could kind of do to not only stay present, but to kind of shift our thoughts. And one was to stop listening to the news or cut out
Yeah.
news. That one of the group members, she had said that she had an hour commute, into the office. And she was absolutely, by the time she got to the office, she was so filled with negative thoughts and so frustrated and angry that it took her another hour and a half to detune, just to relax a little bit so she could actually get into her work. And she said the best thing she ever did was just stop listening on that commute. And now, she listens to more positive, podcasts she enjoys. She listens to audio books and things like that. But that is what, I would agree with you, man. That just, scalpel that out. And I think also social media, negative social media. I've had to be very careful about this one that, I do not watch social media or don't participate in social media about, where I live, for example, just because I like it here. I don't want to screw that up, and if I'm listening to all these people talk about how bad it is, or people moving in here and it's getting so crowded and it's smoky right now, that is going to bring me down. I don't need that in my life.
Right. Absolutely. And you get to choose. That's the great part is you have that choice. That's within your control.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really funny. And then you were talking earlier about people, having that conversation between their ears, that most important conversation. And, look, most of us, have a black belt kicking our own ass. So, it's not as, we are not, we have this propensity to really dwell on these negative thoughts. But, having some tools like you were suggesting, to bring you back into that positive headspace. I mean, I think that's really something that we need to aspire to. But one thing I did want to ask you before we close up is really what either business owners or sales managers can do to kind of recognize somebody who's struggling, or how do they break through that? How do they help those really that they're charged with serving? How do they help them kind of break this cycle?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the sales team that is complaining is not the one you need to address. It's the sales team that's not complaining. The salesperson who's not willing to share feedback, constructive feedback. Because salespeople, they're passionate. They want things to improve. They want things to get better. If they're facing supply concerns, right, and they're saying, "Why can't you get more product for us to sell? This is terrible."
Right.
That's fine. It's the salespeople that are not complaining that you need to worry about. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but here's what happens when complacency sets in, when they've just given up hope, people just don't complain. They don't care enough to complain. And so I would be, if I'm a sales manager or sales leader, I'm going to look at those team members who are usually pretty vocal about how things need to change. And if they are not complaining at all, if they seem just kind of even keel, almost neutral, hey, maybe just have a conversation with them and just say, hey, how are you doing? What we're talking about is improving mental strength and mental resilience. By no means is it going to be a cure-all for someone who's facing some real tough mental challenges. If you're a business owner or leader, your company likely has resources to help employees that really need it. Make all of your employees aware of that, that, hey, there's stuff available for you, because that is critical. But I would look for, it's amazing how they call it a mom's intuition, and that a mother always kind of knows there's something going on with their kids. I think sales managers and sales leaders also have that ability with their team, with their salespeople, and just listen to that voice inside of you that says, hey, we need to help this team out, or we need to try to do this, or we need to address this. If there's a reason you're feeling that and thinking it, then there's a reason. So you got to address it. And it's okay to be vulnerable too. As a sales leader, letting your team know that maybe it's been a tough year and a half for you as well. Right. Not necessarily using that as a way to say, hey, it's tough on me too, not just you guys. I'm feeling it as well. But being able to share what you're comfortable sharing is a nice way to let them know, hey, it's okay it's okay to not be okay. I think that's what Michael Phelps, he started that, I think, when he was in the Beijing Olympics, or when it was there, but talks about how it's okay to not be okay. So yeah,
absolutely. No. And I think to that very point, when I started talking about this, trying to address this blah, and this is from a personal standpoint, that's when I started to get resources from other people. I started to recognize that there are a lot of different things that I could do to kind of change my mental outlook. And I think you're absolutely right. By being a little bit vulnerable and sharing that, all of a sudden, the universe comes back to you and says, okay, here are some things, and you don't feel as alone anymore. And so absolutely, I think you're right. If you do start seeing someone, being a little more quiet than usual, that's probably a good sign. And, to your point, empathy is a big, that is such a critical component about serving a team, no matter who, which, team you're involved with, or if you're the owner of that business, is showing empathy. I mean, that can be just such a game changer in an organization.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Paul, your new book is coming out when? When do we get to see the new book?
What's cool is you don't need the book right now to get some value. Actually, I created a new website for this book. It's called toughtimer.com, TOUGH timer.com. And actually on there's more information on the 30-day Tough Timer Challenge. Also, there's a section called downloads that you can download resources that I have on how to help you sell during tough times, but also you get a few complimentary chapters of the book that you can download and read. But the main event is September 28th. That is the in-store date where it should be available at Barnes & Noble, Chapters, on Amazon, of course. So September 28th is the big launch date. And the website, toughtimer.com, has there's so much content there, which it's funny. My publisher was like, why are you giving away all of this content? I'm like, well, I go with the message. It's about helping salespeople. And when salespeople are struggling, you want to give them as much guidance and resources as you can. So there's, everything from presentation planners, a couple of handouts that are related to each critical selling activity through tough times. So there's quite a bit of information there.
Well, and let's face it, you didn't get into this business to sell books. It was to help people. And that's what it's all about. And sometimes maybe a publisher doesn't always understand that, but that's good that you had an opportunity to suggest that. So, well, that's fantastic. We're going to put that in the show notes as usual and that whole deal. So pretty excited about that, and I'm sure there's a place where we can get a signed autograph copy or something like that. And I'm just kidding. No, I'm just giving you that time.
It'll be, there will just follow the dozens of people lined up outside my office right now.
Yeah, exactly. We'll get out the ropes and the announcer.
Yeah, the velvet carpet.
Yeah, the velvet carpet. All right, my friend. Well, hey, it's always such a pleasure catching up with you. And, I'm glad you jumped on this. This is a perfect time for this. And this is, I think, going to help people tremendously.
Excellent. No, Jason, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. And appreciate all the work you do as well. And thanks for being a great resource for not only distribution, but sales, business operations, everyone. Thanks, man.
All right. Take care. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider hitting that subscribe button. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area on your podcast application or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.